Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. For those of you who are joining for the first time, welcome. I hope you hit the subscribe button, hang out with me for a little while. And for those of you who are returning, I appreciate you. I'm going to tell a little story today. Someone asked me about prison wine, how you make the prison wine, and a couple other things that I'll get into. But I want to start this video by helping you understand or comprehend something a little bit. I watched a few channels yesterday. I don't want to mention the YouTubers' names, it's irrelevant, but they were very pro correctional officer. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to make a point here. They were very pro correctional officer and very anti prisoner. There's a lot of channels like that. And they have their right, of course, to have that channel. But when someone is pro correctional officer and anti prisoner, what it does is it shows me a little bit of their ignorance. Just like if somebody was pro prisoner and anti correctional officer, that would show me their ignorance as well. In other words, taking a side, right? Because there's two sides to every story. And I bring this up because there's 30 prisons striking in New York State right now. And these officers are striking. They are on strike in New York. And their main demand is that they want more staff. They want more correctional officers. They feel like they're unsafe because they don't have the manpower that they're supposed to have. They are also striking because they want the HALT Act removed. The HALT Act was the suspension of long-term solitary confinement. In other words, they could really only keep someone in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. And they don't feel that that's keeping them safe because the individual in prison, the prisoner who commits an act to go to solitary confinement, is back out 2 weeks later and can continue to wreak havoc, right? And so these are some of the reasons that they're striking, which are understandable reasons. I'll get into that a little bit, right? But people just make the prisoner as the bad person and the officer as the good person. So the first thing I will say, and this shows me their ignorance, I tried to even debate a few of them in the comments online, but you can't teach somebody something that thinks they know everything already. Remember that. You can't teach anything to someone who thinks they know everything already. As a critical thinker, I never think I know everything because I don't know everything. I don't even know close to everything. And when you don't know everything, that means you have to take information from both sides, right? You have to determine the source of the information. You have to determine what agenda they have, the people that are giving you the information. Then you have to decipher facts from opinion, look at things from different angles, and then base an opinion. This is what critical thinking is. But a lot of people aren't critical thinkers. They just take a side. I don't take a side, right? I observe everything and then try to make an unbiased decision, right? This is what I learned to do when studying psychology, when studying critical thinking, but we won't really go off the road on that right now. So what I'm saying about officers and prisoners is that first of all, as a correctional officer or as a human being, I learned not to respect professions. I don't respect professions. Someone's profession and the person they are two different things, right? You just had 11 officers kill Robert Brooks, murder Robert Brooks. So were they upstanding correctional officers? No. But someone said they are the bad apples in the bunch. No, that's not true either, because there is an alarming number of bad apples in that bunch of correctional officers. Does this mean that prisoners are all good? No, I think an alarming number of prisoners are pretty dangerous. So there's two sides to every story. But I don't respect professions. You say, do you respect the president of the United States? Well, Bill Clinton, when he was president, was sleeping with a teenager, Monica Lewinsky. He was having sex with a teenager in the White House while his wife and kids were down the hall. So you're going to respect the presidency there? No, right? You have presidents that are just, filling their pockets with money, politicians that are creating laws that are crazy. You have governors that are sending pictures of their penis to 15-year-old girls. You have another governor spending the tax dollars on prostitutes, right? You have another governor of Chicago that was smoking crack. You have religious leaders, priests, and reverends that are molesting and raping children. I know a parole officer, Chris Ortloff. He was arrested for trying to buy a baby in a hotel room to sexually molest, right? So I learned not to respect professions, right? And so when correctional officers stand up and say, we're correctional officers, we're better than the prisoners, you need to respect us, right? That doesn't fool me, right? Because that's a psychology that they try to use to get you to think a certain way. Now, the fact is that I lived in prison for 17 years. I lived there. And I lived there with a mind where I watched everything and analyzed things and paid attention to it. So am I knocking officers? No, I'm not knocking officers. What I'm saying is an alarming number of them are very abusive. An alarming number of them steal from prisoners, right? When prisoners get packages, they steal from prisoners. An alarming number of them are drinking on the job. An alarming number of them abuse their wives. These are facts, cases that I know. An alarming number of them abuse prisoners and beat prisons for no reason. An alarming number of them are racist, right? Because they're from these upstate towns where there's a lot of country boys, right? So are they still each an individual? Yes. I just did a roofing job with two correctional officers that were my correctional officers in prison. They supervised me. And now I sit at the dinner table with their wives and kids because I know they were a few of the good ones. But as I told you, if any of you look at the Stanford experiment, when they took a bunch of college students and they turned the basement of the college into a prison, right? And then they made half of the college students officers and half of the college students prisoners, and it was to be a 6-week experiment, a psychological experiment. It didn't last 6 days because the ones they gave the power to started abusing the ones that they made prisoners, and they had to stop the whole experiment, right? This is a very famous psychological experiment called the Stanford experiment. You could Google it. There's been many experiments on this. And my point is that when you give someone power, when you give someone a badge, a human being, and you give someone a gun, right, they abuse that power. That's not my opinion. Speak to any psychologist, any psychoanalyst, any therapist, right? And they will tell you that when you give a human being power, they tend to abuse that power. Okay, when a person puts on their uniform, they drive faster than if they didn't have on their uniform. Okay, when a person has on their uniform, they're more willing to argue with you than when they're in their civilian clothes. There's an entire psychology behind law enforcement and military and people with the uniform that are given power, right? And this is a part of human nature that these people that just defend correctional officers don't understand. Okay. Now, when it comes to prisoners, there's two sides to every story. I was a prisoner. If I was on the parole board, I probably wouldn't release 70% of the prisoners. I don't know if it's that high of a number. Why? Because an alarming number of prisoners will never benefit society in any way, shape, or form. They take no personal responsibility for their actions. They blame the judge, they blame the lawyer, they blame the cop that arrested them, they blame the district attorney, they blame their upbringing, they blame their families. They never look in the mirror and blame themselves, right? They have no interest in doing anything beneficial with their life. What they talk about in prison is the crimes they're going to commit when they come home, the drugs that they're going to sell. They're going to become a big shot, right? And they live their lives to take advantage of every single person they meet. And when they're in prison, they're dangerous, right? They have no morals. They have no values. They accept no personal responsibility. So this is part that they throw feces on officers, but in all my years in prison, right? So there's that side too. So I'm not siding with any. I know the correctional officer's job is very hard, right? I know an alarming number of the prisoners are very bad, but there's an alarming number of officers are bad, right? So it's a dangerous situation all around. I understand, I said, the officers needing more staff. I understand them needing solitary confinement. They need to be able to control the prison population. Otherwise, there's going to be chaos. But the officers are law enforcement. They are supposed to be the responsible individuals. They are supposed to be the ones that follow the law. And if it's too hard for them, then tell them to go get another job, right? They're, whining and crying about it. I understand. You got to be safe. They got to be safe. So these things should be given to them by the governor, right? So there are two sides to every story, and that's the prison system in a nutshell. It's a very difficult situation, but it all comes down to the psychology of everything. So what we can do to make change, then obviously some change needs to be made, right? And I've never seen in my 17 years, I shouldn't say never. There could be once or twice an exception to the rule. Maybe I'll think of it as I'm speaking. But they show you these clips of what officers have to deal with in prison, that prisoners attack officers and prisoners do this. I have never seen a prisoner attack an officer for no reason. For no reason. I've seen prisoners attack officers when officers got involved in an altercation between two other prisoners. I've seen that. That's the exception to the rule, where two prisoners were going at it with one another, and the officer tried to intervene, and then it causes a big problem. But I've never really seen a prisoner just attack an officer for no reason, unless that officer did something that he wasn't supposed to do. Unless, like, I saw a prisoner stab 3 officers, but the night before, those officers abused that prisoner unjustly. So he was getting his retaliation. I'm not justifying it. I'm telling you why it happened. I saw an officer get feces thrown in his face. Why did he get feces thrown in his face? Because he didn't feed the prisoner for 2 days who was locked in his cell. And when the prisoner was banging on the door saying, "Listen, I need to eat," the officer gave him the middle finger, and then so he threw stuff in his face, right? So there's something that happens, something that transpires usually to make prisoners just don't go around attacking officers for no reason, because their agenda is to go home. They don't want to live in solitary confinement, right? But the guards have it hard too, right? So I'm saying, what's the answer? What's the answer? The answer is that, yes, the officers need more staff. Yes, the officers should be able to use solitary, but the officers also need a better education, right? They need some type of degree. All you need is a high school diploma to be a correctional officer. And they give them a badge and a gun, and they put them in power over a minority, which isn't the smartest thing to do in the world. You follow me? So they need to have some type of degree, even if it's a 2-year degree, to make it mandatory to be a correctional officer. A 2-year degree in social work, a 2-year degree in human behavior, a 2-year degree in some type of therapeutic education where they can learn how to interact with people better. This would make a little difference. I believe it would make a little difference. And I think prisons itself need to run a little more like a boot camp, a little more like a military boot camp, and this way there's more discipline for the prisoners, less free reign for the prisoners. See, there's no rehabilitation in the prison system. The prison system in New York is incarceration, mostly in the United States. It's not rehabilitation, it's incarceration. Right? They have things that look like they rehabilitate on the books, but that's really just to get money from the federal government and from programs, because the programs are a farce. I discussed this before, right? And so the prison system itself in general loves a revolving door. They love the recidivism rate. This is why they want to privatize prisons, right? If they privatize prisons, a lot of businessmen will be right online, because it's a very profitable business, because you don't have to spend as much money as you will receive from the government, right? And then but that's another story. So the system needs to be fixed in a lot of ways. You need to educate the prisoners more. You need to give them a more disciplined structure. The correctional officers, it's a mess. The system is a mess. But don't ever take a side, because on both sides there's good and bad people, right? Anyone that just takes a side and these are cops and these are upstanding citizens, you have no idea what you're talking about. And anyone that says all prisoners are bad has no idea what they're talking about, even though an alarming number are. But don't try and make them. Everyone says all these prisoners are violent. 7% of the prison population has a violent crime. 7%. All right. Most of them are in there for drug related crimes. Right. But whatever. So we're going to wrap that up now. I just wanted to make that clear. And we could, anyone that has any questions, we could get deeper into the topic. And I'm going to go back and discuss something right now, which is prison hooch. We're going to change the subject a little bit. We're going to go to prison hooch, prison wine. Okay. I was excellent at making prison wine. I was really good at it. I'm going to explain to you how it's made. I'm going to explain to you the containers we used, how long it took, the ingredients needed, how strong it was. I'll end on something a little more lighthearted. Okay, so the guys like the hooch. The guys love the hooch. They want to have it when the football games come on Sunday and Monday. They want to have a glass. When the basketball playoffs are going, they want to have a glass. There were special occasions we would make the hooch. It wasn't like we were making it all the time. I was really good at it. So anyway, they sold protein powder in the commissary. And the protein powder came in those big jugs. The big protein powder jugs? It's almost like a gallon jug. It's a big jug. And so I would get one of those protein jugs and I would empty everything out of it and clean the jug. And then we'd fill it with about 10, 12 cans of orange juice. You could only buy 5 cans of orange juice at the commissary, but I would buy 5 cans. I'd have my buddy buy 5 cans, and then we'd pour the orange juice inside the protein container. And then we would put 2 styrofoam cups full of sugar. You see, there's a lot of sugar in prison wine, what they call prison hooch, right? Because the sugar helps the fermentation process. It helps it ferment. So we take the protein jug, we put in 10 cans of orange juice, we put in 2 cups of sugar, and then we put in a little apple for flavor. We put a little apple in there. And then the trick is putting in the yeast. You're not allowed to get yeast in prison. So I'd have one of the officers bring me in a little yeast, which was, they didn't care. A little pack of yeast from the supermarket is $2, and you don't even need a packet. All you need is a little thumbnail, that little bit, about a little bit of yeast, right? So what do we have? We have the protein jug, 10 cans of orange juice, 2 cups of sugar, a little apple, and a little yeast. And you put it in there and you mix it up really good. Mix it up really good. Beat it up for about 5, 6, 7 minutes like that. And then you close the top really tight, put it in a garbage bag, tie it up in the garbage bag, wrap it in one of your towels, and stick it under the bed in your cell, and let it sit there. Now, if it's wintertime, the process takes about an extra 4 or 5 days because the floor is a little colder in the housing unit. The building is a little colder. If it's summertime, the process is done in about 6 days. But in wintertime, it could take about 10 days, 11 days. It depends. So anyway, you got that set up, you stick it under the bed, and you don't touch it for about 36 hours. About a day and a half, you just leave it there. And then when you open it up, you pull it out from under the bed and you open it up, you might hear a little fizz when you open it. Just a little, that's it. And then when you take the top off, you don't really stir it again aggressively. You just move it lightly, real lightly, just for a second. That's to get any gas that's trapped in there out, right? Then you close it back up, put it under the bed. After you do that, after the first 36 hours, when you take it out and do that, you now have to do that about twice a day. When you wake up in the morning, you pull it out and you open the top and you hear it. Tss. This is called burping it. You're letting the gas out, and you move it and lock it up, wrap it up, put it under the bed. At night before you go to sleep, do it again. Tss. That's all you're doing, right? Because if you don't let the gas out, if you don't burp it, the thing will explode, right? And then the whole housing area will stink like alcohol. So that's the process of fermentation. It doesn't take that long in a small container like that. You're brewing a small batch. It only takes that 6, 7 days, 5, 6, 7 days. It depends on the temperature. Heat is your friend, cold is your enemy. And then you take it out after the 6, 7 days, and you got yourself a nice container of hooch, right? And because guys don't drink on a normal basis, a cup of this gets you buzzing real hard. I was really well known for making good hooch. I made really good hooch. I took my time with it. I saw it as a little science. It was fun. It was fun to do, you know. And I was so well known for. I remember when I moved into the cell with my buddy Frank, we had the double bunk for a little bit. And Frank was a big shot in the Hells Angels in Manhattan, a really good dude, really great guy. Unfortunately, he just ended up back in the system. But when they're moving me into Frank's cell, as soon as the door opened and he saw my face, he's like, "Fish, hooch, we're gonna make hooch." You know, he was psyched. We're gonna make hooch inside of the cell. You know, and I was so well known for it that I had an officer come to my cell and say, "Yo, Fish, I heard you make some really powerful wine." Excuse me. He said, I heard you make some really powerful wine. I says, I make good wine. Yes. So he said, let me have, you got a glass? I said, I got some right now. And I pour him a big glass and he drinks it. You know, he says, why? He couldn't believe how good it tastes. You know, he says, let me get another glass. So I give him another glass. He drinks another glass. About 10 minutes later, he comes back to my cell. He says, Fish, I'm drunk, man. I said, yes, it gets you drunk. You know, you can't drink too much because you'll get a headache. You can get a headache. There's a lot of sugar in it, you know, to help the fermentation process. For guys that don't have yeast, they usually put bread in there. They get slices of bread, they pull the crust off, and they stick bread in there because that will help the fermentation process. It's definitely not as good as you using yeast, and the process takes longer. I know I'll get a lot of comments from guys, oh, you do it this way, you do it that way. There's all different ways to do it, all different ways to make hooch, you know. It's my way or the highway, all right? I'm only kidding. But it's good. It was fun. You don't want to get the guys in prison too drunk, though. You know what I mean? Because they could get a little rowdy if they're drunk. You don't want to do that. You know. The other thing is tattoos. You know, tattoos were a process in prison. They were way. I received 7, 8 tattoos while I was in prison too. You know, I don't know if you could see this one, right? I had a whole skull done on my arm. You can't really see the detail of it. Maybe you can there. But is a lot of detail for a prison tattoo right there. That's 20 years old too. I can't pull this shirt up too much, you know. But so this is how the process with the tattoos worked, right? We were allowed to get Walkmans in there. And like cassette players for you youngsters before there was CDs and DVDs and iPods and all that type of stuff. We had the cassette players, you know. And for you real old timers, I don't know if you remember 8 tracks. I remember 8 tracks a little bit, just when I was young, but I remember them, and 45 records. But we're talking tattoos, right? So you get the cassette players, right, and you take the motor out of the cassette player. There's a little motor in there that turns the wheels of the tape. So you take it out, throw the cassette player out, and you got this little round motor. It's just about that big. There's a little tiny motor in there. And there's 2 wires that come off the motor. That's what's attached to the batteries inside of the cassette player. So you got a little motor with a green and a red wire sticking off it, you know? And then what you do is they would take a toothbrush. Say this was a toothbrush, and they would heat up the toothbrush and then bend it, right? Once it's bent like that, right? Look, you could hold it like it's a tattoo gun, right? And then so what they do is once they have, I'll explain it the best I can like this. We're showing you. Once they have the bent toothbrush, let's say this yellow cap is the motor, right? They put the yellow cap on the back and hold it there with rubber bands, right? And then they put the batteries underneath and they hold it with rubber bands, right? Then they take the motor and they put they put the motor on the back like that. And then once the motor is on the back like that, they take a pen sleeve and they put the pen sleeve on top like this. You see? So you see how it's like a gun, right? You have the bent toothbrush with the motor on the back like a rubber hold being held with rubber bands, and you have the pen sleeve sitting on top, right? And then they get some guitar string, and they take the guitar string because you're allowed to have a musical instrument, and they sharpen the guitar string, and they wrap it around the motor. They feed it inside of the motor, and it goes through the motor and then into the pen like this. It goes into the back of the pen, the guitar string, and comes out the front where the little ballpoint is, right? This way it doesn't have any movement. It's coming out that little hole in the front, right? And then when you hook the motor to the batteries, right, the guitar string goes in and out of the pen. It moves in and out of the pen, and you got yourself a little tattoo gun. I'm giving you the basics of it. It could be a little more intricate than that, but I'm not. I didn't make one here for you, right? And then so the big and then guys make some great ones. Guys make some great tattoo guns. Really ingenious guys. I've seen guys build amazing things in there, and they don't have to use the motor of a cassette player. They have motors from little fans they're allowed to have. There's ways to get little motors like that, and guys build stuff. You have to be careful when you get a tattoo in prison because you don't want to get hepatitis. So you never use the ink that someone else used because the guy is tattooing someone and then he puts the needle in the ink and then he tattoos someone and then he wants to use that ink on someone else. So I always made to get my own ink. And the way we got ink was you were allowed to get paints. You were allowed to get art supplies in prison. And in my time, you can get them from home. So there was a company called Dick Blick, which, excuse me, which put out art supplies. And I would have my family order from Dick Blick, order the paints. We'd empty out all the paints and replace them with inks, with colored inks. Looks just like paint. They would mail that into me. I would have my own clean ink. And then I would tell the tattoo guy, my buddy Thor, this guy Dave, whoever I wanted to work on me, you have to be careful because there's some bad prison tattoos look terrible. I find someone who's a really good artist, and then I give them my clean ink to work on me. They build a new tattoo gun. We build it together and they work on me clean afterwards. They could have the ink and do whatever they want with it. You know what I mean? But that's how I stayed healthy and made sure I was safe. And I have a lot of work on me. I have, right now I have like maybe 30 tattoos on my body, but I had probably 7 or 8 of them were done in the prison system. And so that's the story of tattoos in there. That's the story of the prison wine. That's the story of the tattoos. And I hope you understood the beginning, where I was explaining not to take a side, because we don't respect professions in this world. That's me. I don't respect professions. I know human nature too well, you know, and I've seen people in high professions or in professions that are supposed to be respected do some really evil and wicked stuff towards other human beings. And so, how do I respect the profession? I'm not going to do that. Everybody is an individual in this world. And so when the offices, someone takes the side of the offices, I say that's hard to do. You can't look at things as a whole like that. I won't get into all that again. I'm going to post another video. I'm going to make another video most likely this afternoon or tonight about another wild story, about another crazy story that I lived through. So I hope you guys come back and check that out. I don't know if I'll get it done today. I'm going to try and get it done today. It's a Sunday. I have my 6 dogs and it's supposed to be like 50 degrees out today. So I might bring a dog or two up to the beach and the boardwalk to run around, and enjoy this day. And that's it. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate you. And I really mean that. I'm humbled that I don't have a lot of subscribers like other people. I see people with 1 million subscribers or thousands and 500,000. It's crazy. I have 4,000 subscribers. And to me, that means the world to me. That I'm very humbled by that. I really appreciate it. I didn't actually start making these videos to make any money or to make any profit. I made these videos to try and, help people realize that they can change their lives at any time. And for those that are struggling in life, as I struggled really hard in life, that you can turn it around. I want the youth to know that incarceration doesn't have to be a possibility. I want people to know that if they're addicted to any type of substance, that they could stay clean like me. I want people to know that there's hope. And I had a pretty intense life and crazy story. And it was my friends saying, yo, Joey, you got to tell your story. You got to tell your story, and it was not something I really wanted to do. I haven't really even told my whole story yet. I give it to you guys in bits and pieces and, because I can't tell it all at once. But my point is that I'm grateful for you guys and I'm humbled. I'm humbled that you guys, follow my stories and pay attention to me. it means a lot, it does. It means a lot. Thank you very much. I mean that from my heart, and have a good day. Love you guys.